Whether they're depicting a railway that still exists today or one that has long since closed, I've been interested in the concept of steam-era routes in TS Classic for a fair while now. In today's case, we're looking at a route of which a significant portion no longer exists in real life, having closed in the 1960s. This is the Stainmore, Shap and Eden Valley route from Steam Sounds Supreme and Partners, and I must stress that this video is not sponsored by any of the developers who worked on the route. The Stainmore add-on was released in 2020, and all these years later, it's still available on the SSS website for £29.50. Considering the extent of the route coverage, not to mention the replay value and sheer amount of rolling stock that's included, I now understand why the add-on is priced as high as it is. I didn't have the Stainmore route for the longest time, but then the 20th of December 2025 happened. On that day, the route was unexpectedly gifted to me free of charge by Kris from Caledonia Works, and I thanked him for his generosity as soon as I got the chance to do so. I considered the route an early Christmas present of sorts. However, I had to wait a few days before jumping in and trying it out, since the 20th of December happened to be the day when I was leaving to go on holiday in the Wairarapa region and Hutt Valley, near the bottom end of New Zealand's North Island. That trip was mainly for getting much needed footage of some former British rail coaches. Stainmore, Shap and Eden Valley is a massive non-linear route, complete with the Stainmore Railway from Barnard Castle to Tebay via Stainmore Summit and Kirkby Stephen East, the Eden Valley line from Kirkby Stephen East to Eden Valley Junction, a section of the West Coast Mainline from Burton Holme to Penrith via Shap Summit, the branch from Hincaster Junction to Arnside, and finally, a section of the Furness line between Arnside and Kent's Bank. I saw on the 2D map that the devs have laid track up the branch line to Lakeside as well, but there's no completed scenery up that way. That's a bit disappointing, to be honest, and I say that as someone who has ridden along the preserved Lakeside and Heatherthwaite Railway in real life. In any case, my favourite part of the in-game route is Barnard Castle to Kirkby Stephen East, because that involves tackling the climb to Stainmore Summit, which is pretty steep on either side. And Barnard Castle Station is notable for also appearing on the Weardale and Teesdale add-on of June 2015. Meanwhile, Stainmore Summit is a curious place, in the sense that it's in the middle of absolutely nowhere, and it feels like you're on top of the world when you're up here. For reference, the summit sits at 418 metres above sea level. Aside from Stainmore Summit, another landmark on this route that I particularly like is the Bilar Viaduct. Construction on this imposing viaduct started in 1857 and took 3 years to complete, with the viaduct measuring 317 metres long, 7.3 metres wide, and 60 metres tall at its highest point. Sadly, this viaduct no longer exists in real life, as it was mostly demolished in 1963, following the Stainmore Railway's closure in 1962. All that remains today are the stone abutments at each end. There's a good selection of locomotives and rolling stock included with the Stainmore route. For starters, we have the LNER E4 Class 240, modelled by Caledonia Works, and the LMS IVIT 4MT Class 260, also known as Doodlebug or Flying Pig. In all honesty, I don't know who modelled the IVIT engine. But in any case, Both the E4 and IVIT 4MT were new additions to TS at the time, and CW has since released a dedicated E4 pack that includes a full selection of Great Eastern, LNER and British Railways liveries. You only get LNER lined black and BR transitional black with the Stainmore add-on. Meanwhile, you also get the BR standard 4MT class 260 and 460 locomotives, but these are modified variants of old digital traction models, although you don't need any other DLC for these specific models to function. Out of personal preference, I generally use other locomotives, particularly those from CW, when I'm driving on Stainmore, and to be honest, I am not really a fan of the old DT Standard 4 models. As for passenger coaches and freight wagons, there is so much in this category that, rather than trying to list it all off myself, I'll refer you to the SSS website, which has a list of the included rolling stock on this route's listing. What you're seeing here isn't even the entire selection. Before I forget, it's worth noting that there are 13 standard mode scenarios included with this route, with 2 of them being split into 2 parts each. The scenarios range in length from 30 minutes to 1 hour and 50 minutes, and most of them use the IVIT 4MT as the player locomotive, with only 2 using the LNER E4, 2 using the BR standard 4MT Mogul, and none using the BR standard 4MT 460. Your mileage may vary, but personally, I prefer to set up my own free roam scenarios, and rarely play standard scenarios in TS Classic these days. But for those who do like to play standard scenarios, you can also download a big freeware scenario pack from the TrainSim community website. Said scenario pack was made in March 2026 by Highball Simulation, but just be aware of the fact that there's a long list of DLC requirements. There are loads of custom assets throughout the route, too many for me to list them all off in this video, but I will say that the Stainmore route's overall aesthetic reminds me of the freeware Keswick to Penrith route, which I remember downloading from UK TrainSim years ago. Incidentally, I recall that we drove through the Keswick area on our way from Dalston to the Lakeside and Haverthwaite Railway, and caught glimpses of the old railway formation along the way. The Lake District is quite a picturesque part of England, if you ask me. Speaking of nice scenery, I was impressed by the section of the in-game route between Smaardale and Ravenstone Dale, where there's a valley and viaduct that somewhat reminds me of the Midland Line in New Zealand. And now for some random observations I made while exploring the route. It's compatible with Armstrong Powerhouse's Sky and Weather Enhancement pack. There are legible timetable and advertising posters at the stations. Mismatched platform heights at Lowgill Station. A couple of floating light posts at Tebay Station. Working water troughs on the West Coast Mainline between Lowgill and Tebay, and I believe these are the Dillicar troughs. A disused station at Grey Rig, animated level crossing gates at Mosedale Hall and other locations, an abandoned signal box at Appleby East, lots of quick drive consists for the included locomotives and rolling stock, coal drop sidings that you can find at numerous stations, with this example being located at Smaardale, unusual snake-like supports for this type of bench which you can find at numerous stations, a bizarre 2D cat sitting on a luggage trolley at Kirkby Stephen East, another 2D cat on a luggage trolley at Smaardale, an interesting choice of paint colour for the goods shed at Ravenstone Dale, ambient bell ringing and lever shifting audio from the signal boxes, although the audio is very quiet, the flat and sandy terrain around Grange over Sands and Arnside, which contrasts heavily with the remote and hilly nature of Stainmore Summit, and the surprisingly realistic-looking figures on the beach near Arnside Viaduct. As for performance, it varies depending on your PC specifications, the scenery density, the amount of rolling stock in a given location, and whether or not you've got AP weather enabled. On my end at least, the frame rate averages between 35 and 45 FPS based on the aforementioned circumstances, but it can get as low as 20 FPS sometimes, depending on how much resource-intensive rolling stock I've got in a given location. And there you have it, an overview of what you'll get for your money in the Stainmore, Shap and Eden Valley route add-on from Steam South Supreme and partners. As for where I'd rate the route out of 10, I think I'll give it a solid 8, primarily for its replay value and well-detailed scenery. In saying that, one of the few things I dislike about this route is the lack of full scenery on the branch to Lakeside. That matter aside, I can still recommend the Stainmore route to TS Classic players that like British steam era routes, and if you've stuck around to the end of the video, you win tickets to a film about keeping a 4MT tank and a 9F in operation, despite the engines being absolutely stoned out of their minds. It's maintaining high standards,